Alright guys, welcome to a little bit of a different video today. I'm going to be making my first ever tier list and we are going to be ranking some of the most common exercises, and I plan to do this for every muscle group in the body other than maybe calves, because there's like 2 exercises you can do for it. And of course we are going to start off with the biceps because that is one that everyone cares about. So I've got down here, I don't know how many bicep exercises, but a lot of common ones I've seen in the gym and also just ones that I have strong opinions about. And we are going to rank them from S down to D tier. So this is S. If you haven't seen tier videos before, S is going to be your best, D is going to be your worst. I'm going to put them in and I'm going to explain exactly why. So we are going to jump straight into this, and we are starting with the Zottman Curl. And if you don't know what the Zottman Curl is, essentially it's where you curl the dumbbell up like normal. You then twist your hands to pronated, sorry. So you come up, twist, down. So you kind of come up as a normal curl and you come down as a reverse curl. And this is going to go straight into the trash in D tier. I absolutely hate this exercise for many, many reasons. There's already issues with the reverse curl, which we will get to later on. But the Zottman curl essentially does 2 things not very well. If you want to train your forearms, there are way better ways. If you want to train your grip, there are way better ways. If you want to train your biceps, there are way better ways. And you can do all 3 of them in one movement better than the Zottman curl does. So the Zottman curl is just a rubbish exercise. It looks a little bit flashy. Instagram influencers like to use it because it has a name that makes it sound different and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, if you've ever done the Zottman curl and you feel like you're getting bicep growth from it, then I don't know what to tell you, because I don't think you are. I think the Zottman curl is trash. It's just not a good exercise, so I do not recommend it. If it works well for you, then great. I forgot to preface this video with the fact that obviously these are all my opinions, so don't get triggered. If an exercise here you absolutely love and it seems to work really well for you and it gives you loads of growth, then by all means, please do it. But these are just my opinions. And if you value my opinion, then great, listen to it, but value your own experience and your own opinions over my experience and my opinions. I am basing this on what I've seen with myself and lots of clients and my knowledge of exercise physiology, but there are always individuals that some things are going to work well for and some things are not going to work well for. And that is why Zottman curls go in the bin. But next up, we have the incline curl. So this is where you're laying back on a bench, usually sort of like 40, 50, 60 degrees. You have your elbows hanging behind you, you keep them pinned down and you curl the dumbbell up. You get a huge, big, massive bicep stretch. And this, honestly, I'm going to put all the way in the S tier. This is one of my favorite bicep exercises. I think the incline curl is incredible for most people. We have so many studies coming out showing that the stretched position of the muscle is the most hypertrophic. That's where you're going to build the most amount of muscle. And I don't think any exercises put the bicep in a lengthened position as well as the incline curl does. You still get a good contraction at the top. You still get a nearly full range of motion, but you really milk out that stretch. If I had to give one downside to the incline curl, it's that it can be very disruptive, meaning you can do 2 or 3 sets, and if the movement's new to you, then you will be super sore for ages. But if you are kind of used to the movement, then you won't get that disruption, and that means you'll be able to perform it with sufficient volume to build your biceps. So if you aren't doing incline curls, I would highly recommend that you do. Next up, a bit of a controversial one because we have chin-ups. So a pull-up with your palms facing you. And I know a lot of people praise these as incredible bicep builders. And I think they can be. But I'm only going to put them in B. Only going to put them in B tier. And there's a few reasons for that. They could be a lot better. They're also not very inclusive. For example, anybody can do an incline curl because you can use 1 kilogram dumbbells if you need to. But for you to be able to do a good stimulative set of chin-ups, you need to be already relatively strong and not very overweight. Also, you need to have enough of a mind-muscle connection and awareness of your body and exercise technique to use your biceps on a chin-up. Because if you are good at recruiting your back and good at doing chin-ups, you shouldn't actually use that much bicep. You need to modify the movement to make it more of a bicep exercise. And I'm telling you now, as a full-time personal trainer, most people do not have the awareness to use their biceps on demand like that. And that drops it already way down into the B tier, along with the fact that most people aren't going to be able to do it with good technique in the rep ranges required to build muscle. And also the fact that you just won't be able to do a lot of it. It's going to be very, very fatiguing. It's not direct to your biceps. So for example, you can train your biceps 4 or 5 days a week easily, but most people cannot do that for their back. So if your back is sore as shit and your bicep movement that you do 4 times a week is chin-ups, you're screwed. So for me, the chin-up, it can build your biceps, but I don't think it should be relied upon. Next up, we have the reverse curl. And honestly, I'm going to put the reverse curl. This is a tricky one. You know what? It's going in D. And the reason it's going in D tier is because this is for biceps. If this video was for forearms, I would give the reverse curl a little bit more because the brachioradialis muscle does get very well stimulated from this, in my experience. However, if you're looking to build your biceps, doing anything with your palms facing down, so pronated, just doesn't make sense because you will not be able to fully shorten or fully lengthen your bicep. You cannot take it through a good range of motion. And also, when you are holding a bar like that, your limiting factor will actually not be your biceps or your forearms. A lot of the time, the limiting factor on that movement is going to be your thumb. How strong do you think your thumbs are? If you're holding a bar there, let's call it 30 kilograms. What's that? 70 pounds? Something like that. 70-pound barbell. How strong are your thumbs in that angle? Not very. A lot of people also get a lot of elbow discomfort. Your joints can get beaten up. Your wrist can be uncomfortable. It's not a great exercise. Next up, we have the preacher curl. And the preacher curl, in my opinion, is another A tier. I said another. It's our first A tier exercise. Now, why is it not an S tier? Well, the disadvantages to a preacher curl is that a lot of people do not do them very well. You get ego when you train any exercise with biceps, you get ego. But on the preacher curl, a lot of people like to use as much weight as possible, and they're on the preacher curl bench, their elbows are locked in place, but you still see them sort of doing this motion to heave the weight up, and they end up using their lower back, their shoulders, all this kind of stuff just to move the weight. And also, a lot of people cut the range of motion. The preacher curl, just like the incline curl, can give you an absolute baller stretch as you really milk it on the way down. But so many people will come up and just sort of pulse in this top position and never actually get into that bottom 25%, which is the whole benefit of the exercise. However, if you do it well, you get a baller stretch. You get loads of pump, loads of disruption, loads of stimulus. So if you're doing it properly, it is a banging exercise, but I do think there's some areas to go wrong. So that is why it is an A tier exercise for me. It can also cause some elbow discomfort for some people, especially if you've been doing it for a long time, but it's still going to be an A tier exercise. Moving along, we have the good old dumbbell curl. And for me, the dumbbell curl is going to be a B tier exercise. Now, obviously, this is probably quite controversial because this is your bread and butter. You're curling a dumbbell up. That's what the biceps do. So why is it not an S or an A tier? The reason for me is that I think there are a few things that limit you on dumbbell curls other than your biceps. When you're standing up, if you've gotten relatively strong at any time in your life, you've probably experienced where you're doing dumbbell curls and you feel your core, your abs tensing like shit. And sometimes I feel like I'm doing dumbbell curls and I am being limited by the strength and the stability of my core musculature rather than my biceps. Maybe I'm just crazy strong, but I don't think that's the case. I think this is an issue that a lot of people have. Other than that, we also have that ego issue. It's easy to use more weight than you can handle, to cut the range of motion, to swing, to use other muscles. Whereas with the incline curl, with the preacher curl, you are locked into place. You are not going to be able to swing and cheat anywhere near as much. And also, because you're locked into place, because you're not having to use your core and all those other stabilizing muscles, the actual fatigue per the stimulus you're getting, the stimulus to fatigue ratio, is going to be far better on these exercises where you're locked in place than it is on a freestanding movement like the dumbbell curl. So yes, it's a good movement, but it's a B tier. There's definitely better options. And whilst we're on this one, I'm going to put the barbell curl in the same place. The only thing that could potentially put it in the C tier is the fact that you can do it in a squat rack, and that pisses everybody off. But in my experience, actually, no, I've just remembered something. The barbell curl is going to C tier. This is hugely controversial, but the issue I have with the barbell curl is that so many people hurt their wrists by doing barbell curls because you are forced into a fully supinated position. If you are using an easy bar, it goes back into B tier. Okay? If you're using a straight bar, it's into C tier, purely because I like the free range of motion you get on your wrists using a dumbbell. After that, we have the cable curl. And this one, I'm going to put in B tier again. The cable curl I like a lot. You get a lot of stimulus. You get a very consistent amount of resistance because you're against a cable rather than gravity. And you can get a lot of stimulus without a lot of fatigue. The issue I have with cable curls is that it's the same thing with most cable exercises. It seems that you can just do them endlessly and never really get much from it in terms of stimulus. If one of our measurements of stimulus is soreness, which in my opinion, soreness is a measure of stimulus to a degree. In my experience, it takes a lot of cable curling to get remotely as sore as you would from a a dumbbell movement. So for me, that places it into the B tier. However, you don't get a lot of fatigue, but again, you have that issue of core stability being a limiting factor. And you also have that ability to swing and cheat, which you don't get from the movements where you're locked into place. Whilst we're on the topic of machines, I'm going to talk about the machine curl, and this goes into the A tier. Again, the main reason for the machine curl being one that I really, really like is that you are locked into place. Yes, it suffers from the same issues that the cable curl has, in that you can just do a shit ton of volume on it. However, you can get a really big range of motion. In a lot of the machines, you can adjust where it's hardest. So you can make it really hard in the lengthened position and easier in the shortened position, or you can just get a nice consistent strength curve throughout. You can get a big range of motion. It limits cheating because you're seated and your elbows are locked into a pad. And for that reason, I really like the machine curl. You also don't have a lot of the ego associated with these other movements because yes, you can show off doing a barbell curl, chin-ups, a dumbbell curl, using a lot of weight, but who gives a shit how much you machine curl? No one goes, how much you machine curl, bro? So because of that, it's an A tier movement, in my opinion. Next up, we have bicep 21s, and it's blasphemous probably, but they are going in C tier. Bicep 21s, if you don't know, I think it was Arnold. Everyone says it was Arnold, so I'll assume it is. He created this concept where you do bicep curls, you do 7 in the bottom range of motion, 7 in the top half of the range of motion, and then 7 complete exercises. 7 reps in the complete range of motion, sorry. Oh, I'm getting my words tangled. But this gives you an insane pump. And because it gives you such a crazy pump, a lot of people assume it's going to be an A or S tier exercise. I think that the pump hides an actually very suboptimal exercise. It's kind of one of those pump movements. It's kind of backwards because you're starting with a partial and then going into a full range of motion. If you were to do them in reverse, which I know Jeff Nippard is a fan of, they become a little bit better. But I do think that because you are just fatiguing yourself unnecessarily before you even get to the hardest part, I think it's verging on junk volume. The reason I don't think it's as bad as the D tier exercises is that I do think it's going to be limited by your biceps. I don't think you're being limited by your thumbs or your forearms or wrist discomfort or anything like that. I think that when you're doing 21s, I think your biceps are screaming. And I think because it gives you such a crazy pump, it can be very, very good for building a mind muscle connection. So that's why it's a C tier. It's not a B tier because I think it's borderline junk volume. But if you accept it for what it is, I think it's an okay exercise in some circumstances. Next up, I'm going to piss some people off because Jeff Cavalier's very own waiter curl, I'm going to put, where is it going? It's going in the trash. I hate the waiter curl. The waiter curl is the most stupid exercise in the world. If it works for you, then great, whatever. Like I said at the start, if it works for you, ignore me, whatever. Everyone's different. But I think the waiter curl is trash. The point of the waiter curl is that you emphasize the peak range of motion, the peak contraction in the bicep, and you pull your wrists back, which take your forearms out of the movement and allow you to feel a really big squeeze in the bicep, which it does. It does do that. However, there are so many downsides to this movement that I think it just completely makes it in the bin. So yes, it gives you a huge peak contraction. However, the peak contraction is one of the least stimulative parts of the range of motion. We have so many studies saying that a long muscle length is the most hypertrophic place to train your muscles. So why would we completely eliminate it in a waiter curl? Because if you've ever tried to do a waiter curl, you can't get a full range of motion. You don't get a good stretch at the bottom. Nothing like an incline curl. It's eliminating the best part of the range of motion to emphasize a subpar range of motion. Also, you are not going to be limited by your biceps. You might be able to waiter curl from your biceps a ton of weight, 20, 30 kilograms, 70, 80 pounds. But your wrists are not going to be able to support that in that bent back position. If you're looking to do a waiter curl and actually build your biceps, I really, really do not think you'll be able to overload it and provide your biceps with a stimulus that allow them to grow. Again, it's just my opinion, but that is why I think the waiter curl is absolute trash. And in nearly any situation, I don't think it's worth including into your program. Next up, we have the hammer curl. And this is going to go into the C tier. The reason it's in C tier, why is it not in D tier? I think it's better for building your biceps than the Zottman curl and the reverse grip curl. So it's not in D tier because it does not belong near those. The hammer curl is an incredible exercise for building your brachialis and your brachioradialis and your grip strength. And it will build your biceps to a degree. But why is it not higher than C tier? It's because this is for biceps. Again, it's not for your forearms, your brachioradialis, the big chunky muscle at the top of your forearms. I think if you're looking to focus on that, it's a great exercise. If you're really looking to build your biceps, I think you're wasting your time if you're only doing hammer curls or if you're spending a lot of time doing hammer curls. Because for every set of hammer curls you're doing, I think you'd get more growth from swapping it out and doing a set of one of these exercises. Along with that, you also get the limitations of the standing curls, like I spoke about, like core stability, like ego, swinging around, all of that kind of stuff. So I think the hammer curl is a very good exercise, but not for isolating the bicep. Next up, we have spider curls, and these belong in the B tier, in my opinion. The reason for this is because I really like that you are locked in place. Just like incline curls, you cannot, or it's much harder to cheat because I've just realised a mistake in this, but I'll explain that in a second. Don't worry. You're locked in. You can't cheat, or if you do cheat, it's much harder. The reason it doesn't belong in an S tier is that you don't, or an A tier, is that you don't get that fully lengthened position. You are emphasizing the shortened range of motion. It can be fantastic for developing a mind muscle connection. It's fantastic for getting a massive pump in the biceps. I think it's the best way of developing a pump and mind muscle connection in terms of out of all of these. It's probably the best one for that. If you have a client that can't feel the biceps, I think the spider curls are amazing for that. However, their limitation is they don't get that lengthened range of motion, which is so stimulative for muscle growth. So they are missing out on A tier, but only just. The mistake I made was that I called this a preacher curl, and I also called this a preacher curl. This was supposed to be a concentration curl, not a preacher curl. So we're going to call that a preacher curl, and we're going to call this a concentration curl instead. Okay? And the concentration curl, I'm going to put, where should it go? I'm putting the concentration curl in the C tier. The main reason for the concentration curl going in the C tier is that I think so many other exercises do the same thing but better. Basically, why would you do a concentration curl when you can do a preacher curl or a machine curl or an incline curl or a cable curl? I don't think there's any reason to, unless you personally get a really good stimulus from it. I don't think there's any actual reason to. And not to mention, you can only do one hand at a time. When you're doing a curl one hand at a time, everything takes twice as long. Have you ever done 3 sets of Bulgarian split squats before? It takes like 20 minutes. And bicep training gets boring if you're doing it for a long amount of time. I don't see a good argument to do a concentration curl when you've got options like the preacher curl, like the cable curl, and stuff like that. The very last exercise for today's tier list of the best bicep movements is going to be the Crucifix Curl. And this is where you're stood in the middle of a weight stack and you're basically doing a front double bicep like this. And this is going to go in the trash. Again, I'm probably pissing some people off, but I hate this exercise nearly as much as the waiter curl because I think people do this purely because they think they look cool. I have never done a crucifix curl in my life and thought, wow, that felt like a really stimulative movement that's going to build my biceps. It kind of feels like I'm doing half of a movement. You never really fully lengthen, you never really fully shorten. Your elbows are in an awkward position, you can't use a lot of weight. The tension curve is really weird. Again, if you like the crucifix curl and it seems to work well for you, then I'm so fucking happy for you. But for me, I think the crucifix curl is trash. I think it was designed for literally like this guy in the picture. I think it was designed for people on Instagram to be able to show off the fact that they have biceps and abs topless whilst doing an actual exercise. So it looks like they're showing you an exercise rather than showing you their abs, when in reality, they are just showing you their abs. So that is why I think the crucifix curl belongs in the trash. So as you can see, we have quite an even split here, but there's definitely some 3 top tier exercises, in my opinion, in my experience, that stand out above the rest. Like I said, don't get triggered. If you find that any of these movements work really, really well for you, then that's amazing, and definitely keep doing them. Don't do them. Don't not do an exercise that works great for you, that seems to build muscle for you, just because I said I don't like it. Because who the hell am I? No one cares who I am. But this is just my humble opinion, my 2 cents from my experience with a bunch of clients, with myself, with talking to people, with knowledge of muscle physiology, exercise physiology. It's just my 2 cents on the matter. If I missed any exercises that are your favorite, let me know in the comment section. Tell me where you would rate them. If you disagree with any of my tiers, any of my rankings, again, let me know. Call me an idiot. But don't just call me an idiot. Tell me why I'm an idiot. I'm happy to be an idiot, but I need to know why. Thank you for watching. Let me know which muscle group you'd like to cover next. As always, the top link in the description will take you to Progressive Physique Coaching. You can find out all about my online coaching, join my team of athletes who are making some crazy progress. Email me, ashmaypt@gmail.com, if you have any questions or would like more information. And until the next one, see you later, guys.